The views expressed by our guests in the following video are solely the opinions of our guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and or opinions of the Ola 7 podcast show. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the Sportlight with Yvonne Mangunda, and as usual we bring you a big sporting personality to talk about their journey and hear their insights on Zimbabwean sport. And today is no different. I have in the studio, like I wish I had a drum roll because Ronald is in the studio. Ronald. Wow, Ronald.
Hi, Yvonne.
I will say the first time I met this man, he was still doing media for Highlanders, and then I saw him move from being the media person at Highlanders to being the acting CEO, and then he just went on and on and on. You kept climbing up until now. You are the CEO of the most talked about Zimbabwe Premier Soccer League club. We are talking about Scottland FC. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, viewers. I really appreciate to be invited here. Yeah, it means a lot.
And I don't even know where to start because, like, what was the moment? Like the moment you got whether it was a call or it was a text or to say, because you obviously had worked in Bulawayo, and even when you moved from Highlanders, you were based in Skies. And then leading to the moment where you're told, we want you to come and be the CEO of Scotland.
Okay. I always say for me, it was probably it was a bit of a difficult decision in the sense that I had just joined Fetal Communications from Highlanders. Fetal Communications is a media company that I'm emotionally attached to, that I love so much. So I just joined them, trying to bring it up because it was going down. A lot was going on, especially in their radio stations. But when the call came for me to come this side, it was difficult in the sense that it was difficult to leave Fetal Communications. But knowing Scotland FC and the owner, Honorable Scott Sakpwanya, his vision, the chairman, Tonderai Sakpwanya, whom I know personally, worked with him when they were sponsoring Highlanders through Better Brands when we were negotiating that deal. So from my time at Highlanders, we kept in touch. So I understood the vision, I understood what they wanted to do. So I found their vision and their dream aligning with my personal vision as a person, as a football administrator. So it made it a bit easier for me to then, take up this responsibility. And trust me, Yvonne, I am not regretting.
You're not regretting,
yes.
But we can't run away from the fact that was money also an aspect, because we hear about the big bucks at Scotland. So obviously an offer for a job like that must mean a bigger pay.
Yeah, no, it's I always say to people, especially in the streets, friends and relatives, to say when probably that's one perception that we need to change about Scotland FC. Where people think that we are money bags. Scotland FC are not money bags. It's a properly run club with decent income to take care of its employees and players. So for me, it was not necessarily about the money, but it was about a challenge. I'm one person who likes facing challenges. So it was a new challenge. It was giving me an opportunity to face a new challenge. Remember, I had, an opportunity to work for Highlanders FC in two different capacities. So as a football administrator, sometimes you need to appreciate different setups. So I didn't want to be that person who only knows football from Highlanders' perspective. So when Scotland FC came on board, I saw it as a challenge, because even if you look at the ownership models, Highlanders and Scotland FC, they are two different clubs. So for me, that was the, you know, that was the reason why I took up the challenge. And to be fair, on Scotland FC, maybe on the money side, you know, the offer, the salary, it is competitive for a CEO, especially for someone like myself coming in from Bulawayo to, you know, to settle here in Harare. So yeah, basically, that's what it is.
So we talk about you being a CEO at Scotland, you being headhunted, but what was your point of entry in Zimbabwean sport? Where did this sports journey start and these aspirations to be involved in sport?
Interesting one. I think I believe in faith. I'm a Christian. You know, I believe that sometimes, or not sometimes, I believe that when we are born, you know, God plans everything. You know, our journeys are you know, are planned by God probably before we're even born. I was a football person from the time I grew up. There's a story that is known by a few, especially people in the village where I grew up in Woskola. You go there, Yvonne, and say you are looking for Ronald from where I grew up in. They will tell you that we don't know him. Why? Because my name is Roland, right?
I see that you read Ronald Roland, and I'm like,
yes, my name is Roland, but there is a name that I also want to bring to your attention, maybe for people to understand where I come from when I say sometimes, you know, it's fate, you know. So when my other name is Bruce, you go to my village, you say you're looking for Bruce, easily identify me. I was given that name, I think I was about 2 years. I think I was about 3 years old by my late maternal grandfather. May his soul rest in peace. So I am told that he gave me this name because, you know, it was the name that came after Bruce Grobler. My grandfather loved Highlanders Football Club. He followed football a lot. So I'm told when I grew up, what do you call it, Manza. Just like Bruce Grobler, and I was light. And I also liked playing with the ball. So my grandfather said, this is Bruce. So it was after Bruce Grobler. So it's a name that stuck. It's not in my birth certificate, but it's a name that is known in the village by everyone. So even when I grew up, you know, I used to like playing football. So I used to love football a lot. In my family, if you go and ask, you know, when I was growing up, there is no one in the history of my family who loved football like I did. So I thought I'll become a football player, but I was not good enough. I only played at school, primary, high school. I couldn't make it to professional football because, look, I was not good enough. I was just an average player. Then I was coming in a family that valued education. My grandfather would insist that you must go to school. So fast forward to my to me coming to football. Football.
But before we fast forward to that, explain to me the Ronald Roland situation.
My name is Roland. Then it so happened that it was just a mistype. We only discovered that when I was registering for my grade 7 exams. It's my teacher, Mrs. Ndlovu, then discovered that. The funny part of it is that I participated in sports, used my birth certificates. No one realized that. So when we were about to write our grade 7 exams, when we were registering, we asked to bring our birth certificates. You know, it was so embarrassing. Then the teacher calls me and asks me in front of everyone and says, Are you Roland or you are Ronald? I said, no, I'm Roland. He said, no, come. You know, because the registration, it needed due diligence. So that's why my teacher picked that. So we're writing grade 7. Can you imagine from grade 1 up to grade 7? The whole community, the whole school, they know me as Roland. They call me Roland, they knew me as Roland. Then there's nothing I could do. I had to accept it that I'm Ronald. Wrote my grade 7 exam. So when I started my Form 1, I changed identity. There's now Ronald. Then the people that I went to school with,
I like.
what's happening?
If you had been a football player, I would have said,
so that's how then it changed. So obviously on social media, social media is about connecting with our communities. There is probably someone. There are a lot of people who know me from primary school. They know me as Roland. If they want to connect with me on social media, so I have to make sure that Roland part is there, and also the Ronald part for who I am now. So it's Roland is my name that I can't erase, because the community where I come from, they know me as Roland or Bruce. So that's how that's the story about the Ronald.
And getting back to the journey, we're talking about your entry into sports administration.
Go back to fate again. I went to college. Initially, I wanted to do sociology. Came here to use it here in Harare. Tried to secure a place for the sociology class. I was told I was late, so I was left with one option: the MSU. I went to MSU. I wanted to do sociology. By then, there was no sociology, and I had to then do media and society studies. So I liked writing a lot. So I'd write articles, sending to the newspapers when I was still a student. But they were not sport related. Right. So when then went for attachment, I went to the Southern Eye, where I used to contribute a lot. The then editor, Kolwani, said to me, before I even went for attachment, he called me one of the days and asked me, what are you doing? I told him I'm a student. So he said to me, no, you are a good writer. So when you want attachment, please come back here. So I went back. It was an easy entry for me. But there was only one slot left. There's a guy called Vitalis Moyo, who was leaving. That guy was a student at NAST, so he was completing his attachment. He was going back. So the only slot that was left was that one that was left by Vitalis. It was in the sports desk. So no one knew that I'm passionate about sport. So they called me and said, in the meantime, you can be writing sport. We'll change you to hard news. I said, you know what? This is my passion. So I then, throughout my attachment, I worked as a sports journalist with the likes of was our sports editor, may he so rest in peace, Wellington Tony. I was working directly with Fortune Bele. So that was our. So during that process, because I loved football so much, then I would get some opportunities to interact with the likes of Ndumiso Gumede when he was still still at Highlanders. I just say to myself, but one day I would love to be a sports administrator. From that time when I was on attachment. So when I went back to college for my final year, for my project, then we were asked to submit three topics for dissertations. For some reason, I had 2 topics on the subject of political communication. I think those ones were my favorite topics. Then the last one, it was about football. It was a time when Dynamos was enjoying dominance over Highlanders. So I said I wanted to research how the Herald and the Chronicle are framing that Dynamos dominance over Highlanders. I found it very interesting, but that was not my priority. Then there is this lecturer of mine called Lighton Mube. He knew my passion for football from the first day I came to college, because I was a staunch fan of Highlanders.
Was he your supervisor?
He then said, I'll make sure that I supervise this topic.
He was my supervisor, and mine was social media used by Highlanders, Dynamos, and Caps United.
Wow. So when I gave him those, he was the one who was approving topics. So he looked at, when he saw the topics, he raised with the moment he saw that I'm the one who was submitting that, he said, for you, we are going to work with this one, and I'm going to supervise it. Okay.
It's kind of funny we're the same lecturer, because I know with him, because he's such a big
Very
Dynamo
passionate.
supporter,
Yeah,
passionate supporter.
yeah.
So once he picks somebody who's in sport,
Yeah,
he was my supervisor, and there was no other topic. We were going to
it
stick
was
with sport.
sport. So it's then when we sat down, then he called me. He's a lecturer who believed in my, I sometimes when you're at college, you play a lot. So he used to call me and say, you know what, you've got a lot of potential. You need to rate. So when we sat down, we discussed that topic, gave me time frames, and said, young man, I want you to finish this topic by this time. So I found it very, very interesting. The more I read, the more I did my research, carried out my research about football, the more I fall in love with football administration. Because for me, that was then a very good starting point, because I then thought that probably there is something that we are missing as a nation when it comes to football administration. Probably people don't understand the key stakeholder of the sport. They don't understand the fan behavior. So for me, that was the starting point. I need to understand the fan behavior, because the fans are the key stakeholders of the game. Right?
And
so
Alakat will make you read, eh?
Yes, and I read, and I started understanding the fan behavior to an extent that it got to my fingertips to say, okay, this is how the fans behave. Football is an emotional sport. How do you deal with their emotions? How do you play around your key stakeholders? Because at the end of the day, if there is one stakeholder who must be happy in football, we undermine that. It's the fan. All these other stakeholders, the corporate world will come if the fans are happy and they are coming, to the stadium. And as football administrators, for me, that was my entry point in terms of my understanding, football from an administrative perspective. To say, okay, I always see football from a terracist perspective as a fan. I want to understand football from an administrative perspective. As an administrator, how do I best understand the fan behavior? Because the fans are the key stakeholders. So that was for me, that was the entry point to that. So I wrote my dissertation. It's one that I'm still proud of, and I think it was one of the best, within our student, because I got a distinction. So when I went for my master's, then I met this other supervisor again, Philip Santos. He's now in Namibia. When I went for my master's in NAST, he then picked it very fast that I was interested in football. But when I did my master's, I had experienced a bit of football administration with Bantu Rovers, because when I finished my undergrad, I went to Bantu Rovers. It was a short period, but very, very valuable. It was so enlightening to work with Mete Ndlovu and Wilbert Svanda. There are certain principles that laid the foundation in my sports administration that by then I took for granted, but every day I start now appreciating. And that's why I appreciate Mete Ndlovu a lot. Most people see Mete Ndlovu as a great player, as a great coach. That guy, when it comes to football brains from an administrative perspective, is something else. So it laid the foundation. So when I then went for my master's, Philip Santos then picked it, that this guy is interested in football. He called me in his office. He asked, I said, you know what, I want to supervise you. Which topic do you want to? I said, because I told him, no, for my undergrad, I studied this topic, but now I want to change. They said, no. That's where your passion is.
Yes.
That's why I called you. I want you to, to continue on this trajectory. So my master's dissertation, it was also about fan behavior, now from a digital media perspective. Dynamo's Highlanders, fandom again. It was an easy one, but it also increased my my understanding of the fan behavior. So it made life easier for me. because whilst I was doing my master's, when I was about to, to finish my master's, then Highlanders advertised that they were looking for a media and communications officer. Then I applied.
It's kind of our story is almost a line, because you did topics on Highlanders, you end up at the Highlanders. It's the same thing. I did a topic on social media use by Dynamo's Highlanders and Caps United, and before I graduated was actually around the time that I then joined Dynamos, got an opportunity to join Dynamos. I think it also speaks to sometimes there are parts that take us, we might not understand, I don't know, the calling, the grace, but there are certain things that happen along the way. But when you saw that advert, you're interested, yes, in media, you're doing media, but this is Highlanders. It's a big institution. It's an institution that is well publicized, some of the things that happen internally. For you, what were the challenges that you were expecting?
Maybe let me start by, I saw the advert. I didn't want to apply. My first perception or my first reaction was, these big institutions, probably the advertising is just for the sake of formality.
Yes, they already have their people.
Yeah, but their people kept on calling me, saying, go and apply, there's an advert. People were nothing to do with Highlanders. And I remember saying this, during that time I'd already started, I was a part-time lecturer at Zimbabwe Open University. And there's this lady that I worked with, and I said, people, she said to me, you know what, the people who are calling you believe in you. Just go and do it for them, whether you are called for interviews or not, but just go and apply. Then I applied. So when I applied and when I was shortlisted, I went for interviews. I picked a lot of loopholes and gaps during the interview, because you could actually tell, with all due respect, you'll expect this from a lot of institutions. At the level at which I was in terms of understanding media, you don't expect everyone to have that kind of understanding in every institution. So I picked a lot of loopholes when throughout the interview process. But one thing that I liked is that the panel appreciated what I wanted, or what I intended to bring, to the table. So I got the job. Before I got that job, I still remember I attended those interviews. It took a bit of time to, I think for about 2-3 weeks without communication. So I had to move to Harare. I think I was about to land another job here in Harare. I still remember quite well. Then I got a call. It was, I think it was on a Friday. That same weekend, Highlanders was playing here against the National Sports Stadium. I think the match ended. It was a draw, 0-0 draw. Now I was caught in between. Should I go back to Bulawayo or just, I had to make a decision, because my passion is football administration anyway. So I went back to Bulawayo to take up that job. It was an interesting experience. I worked with an amazing mentor in Nhlanhla Dube. He understood the role that I was supposed to play. So he was very, very supportive. You make sure that you make me comfortable. It was so easy, because initially I thought that, you hear a lot of stories about Highlanders when you're outside. Mm-hmm. No, those old Madalas, this and that. So I was a bit, skeptical to say, am I going to be able to operate? But to be honest, the club was so welcoming. If there's anything that I failed to do in that department, probably it's because of myself. It's because of my limitations, and obviously financial limitations, because as a club we're limited financially. But in terms of willingness, they were very, very supportive.
But don't you find that happens a lot, like where you've got these perceptions that are out there about these big clubs, that I don't know if it happens to you, but I also struggle with that when for example, you talk about Nhlanhla Dube, right? I had Isaiah Mufuruza, who was the chairman at Dynamos, was very supportive of where I wanted to go with the media department. And people expect you to have negativity to speak about these clubs, to be very negative, and they don't appreciate the fact that you actually have a positive story to say about that experience.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You know, I've seen quite a lot of people talk about people understanding things from when you understand there's a difference from someone who understands an institution from inside and someone who sees it from a distance. That's why I always say sometimes I get so disappointed when I see people from within an institution or now outside now they're saying negative things, because I expect you to know better. I expect you to protect the brand. You know the struggles. You know our clubs are struggling. That's a fact. They are struggling. So you get that a lot, where people expect you to say negative things about the club. I'm not saying this thing because I'm protecting Highlanders as a club, but I have to be honest. I think it's not a coincidence that these institutions are still standing up to today. Highlanders is turning 100 years next year. There is definitely something right that is being done by whoever is, you know, from epoch to epoch, from time to time, is given a responsibility to lead that institution. We are not, you know, they are not saints. People, you know, make mistakes here and there. But if you were to measure them out of 100, I think they'll get a pass. So it's something that we come across very often, where people probably are quick to criticize. Because if there's one thing that is easy in life, it's just to criticize. But there are certain things that you need to understand from inside for you to start appreciating. So that was me with the Highlanders. The good thing about me is that probably because I grew up as a fan, I was so blindfolded to an extent that for me it was taboo to criticize Highlanders.
But did that experience of, because we're obviously going to talk about your time as well as the CEO at Highlanders, but do you think that moment where you were a subordinate will or has shaped what sort of CEO you are now at Scotland?
Yes, definitely. You know, Highlanders is for me. Highlanders is a college. I'm proud to say, if you ask me, the learning institutions that I've attended, I had Highlanders on top, because it was quite an interesting experience. Administratively, I don't want to say Highlanders the best, because I only worked for Highlanders and now I'm at Scotland. I don't want to say Highlanders has been the best, right, in the country. I don't want to speak like a fan, right? But administratively, I think that setup, it gives you a lot of, you know, a lot of training as an upcoming administrator. Never mind all these other things that happen in these big institutions. If you go there with a positive attitude, wanting to learn, remember, can you imagine? I was surrounded by such people. Ndumiso Kumete, you know, he's achieved a lot. Nhlanhla Dube himself, you know, he saved the club. He's experienced. The likes of Peter Dube, the likes of Luke Mangunda. There are a lot of old people. You know that a lot of people, you know, insult a lot as fans, but they bring in a lot of wisdom. So being surrounded by those people, you know, for me it was a blast. I'm not saying that we had the best of relations with these old, you know, these old men within Highlanders, and you expect that in a setup where you are being cooked, or where you are being, you know, trained. Even in our own family setups, we've got our grandfathers, our uncles, our aunties, you know, here and there they'll whip you into line, and you know, you won't agree on everything. But if you look at the bigger picture, being in a setup where you've got that kind of experience, adding the structures that are there at Highlanders, for me that was the best. Right, first as a subordinate before I even became a CEO.
As your CEO.
Right, then you are working with someone who, you know, who understands that the role that you are playing in an institution, who come in the morning, that's Nhlanhla Dube, will come in the morning, he sit down with you and say, what are the issues? How are we tackling this? How are we moving forward? How are we protecting the brand? Because the brand is always under attack. That's one of the, you know, one of the biggest challenges that I face at Highlanders, where you are always defending the institution. So it stifles creativity. You spend a lot of time and energy trying to defend the institution. And
when you've solved this one, another one pops up.
You see, when you want to start, activate, your creative, then something comes up. There is mud. Then you need to start cleaning the brain. So those are some of the challenges that we're facing. So, but look, the setup generally, it was so convenient for me as someone who is because I've got my own ambitions. So it was quite convenient for me, and I'm very grateful for that.
I remember having a conversation with you before the Independence Cup in 2021.
It was after COVID. Right?
It was after COVID, 2021. And we were having a conversation, obviously, Dynamo's media officer to you, Highlanders media officer. And by that time, I was asking you about, you've got a blue tick. Yeah. How can I get a blue tick? And you're trying to teach me how I can navigate it. Yeah. Why mention the issue of the blue tick? Because Highlanders probably the first club to get a blue tick on Facebook. Yeah. But it was at a time when clubs really did not value, appreciate social media. We've seen change now. Clubs are really active on social media. But at that time, like clubs literally, it was Bulawayo Chiefs and the rest were still not really figuring out their way. How did you navigate the issue of use of social media, especially in an institution like we're saying, that has been around, has had a followership since they were formed? They still continue to have followers, whether they're on social media or they're not.
Okay. It was a very difficult one. I think I have to mention this to say, sometime during my first days at the job, the good thing about me, if one strength about me, I absorb pressure. I'm not one person who simple succumbs to pressure, but there was a lot of pressure, and I could actually feel it that the fans out there, and probably some people within the club, I'll forgive them because they didn't understand. They wanted good things to happen for the club, but I felt it was. The attitude was like, we brought you in here to play a catch-up game to Bulawayo Chiefs. Because when I came in, remember these were the days when Bulawayo Chiefs was, making a lot of waves on Twitter.
The kings of Twitter.
Yes. So when I came in there, I knew what I was, because look, I understand. If there is one thing that I understand now that I can stand up and say, no, I understand, it's the media in and out. So I understand communication. I understand the role of a communication department in an institution. So for me, the pressure that that was coming from all angles, people wanted Highlanders to be like Bulawayo Chiefs, right? They wanted to be, so it was like we were playing a catch-up game to Bulawayo Chiefs. Yet for me, my work plan was clear to say, here we've got a Highlanders football club, an institution as big as Highlanders, with over 10 Facebook accounts, right? Twitter accounts, I think about 2 or 3. There is no following, these pages are not being updated and so forth. So I understood the role of the digital media then to say every institution now needs this digital media for the sake of your stakeholders. So to then convince people, especially the fans out there who are actually excited about Bulawayo Chiefs, that you can build your digital community around the identity that already exists of the club. Highlanders has got an identity. There was no need for me to then start to come and say, okay, what is Bulawayo Chiefs doing? Then I start chasing Bulawayo Chiefs. What is Caps United doing? I had to remain,
But at that time, the struggle was real, because I remember a simple thing as a name. I remember when Dynamo's F.C. When I chose that name, there was literally Dynamo's official, Dynamo's FC, Dynamo's, like every name was taken by these accounts that were not official. And I think even at Highlanders, that was also the scenario, because I remember how you highlighted to say, this blue tick will help you for people to really identify which one is the real official one. And even Dynamo's up until today, because they don't have that blue tick, they still that struggle where an ordinary fan might not really be able to tell which one is the official page.
Yeah. So that one is a very, very important point. For me, it became easier because, I then started identifying the content that speaks to the Highlanders identity. I'll then bring the content that I know that all these, because these pages are owned by fans, content that ordinarily they don't have. So go to the archives, bring the the old good days, nostalgia, and what was currently happening. So the page started gaining momentum. Then with a bit of luck, I socialize a lot. Then there is a group that I joined for African sports administrators on WhatsApp. I don't even know, I can't remember who added me in that group. Then that's when I then met a man called, we used to then, WhatsApp, people had a lot of time, especially during COVID. When you go there, you start debating and so forth. So the moment I realized that I'm the only Zimbabwean in this group, it was a group with so many people, then I had to make sure that this is an opportunity for me to market my Highlanders. So sit down and write the story of Highlanders. This is Highlanders Football Club, this is the history, Then people started generating a lot of interest. One of them is Leo Mario from Germany. The guy is a lecturer and is the founder and CEO of Result Sports. I hope you have seen, the Result Sports, they consolidate all the digital media platforms of all football clubs in the world that you can ever think of. Your Real Madrid, they're the ones who, do that, Result Sports. So he's the CEO and founder. So he then started generating interest. Then came to my inbox and said, I'm interested in this story. Tell me more about this club. Then we started having calls, So he said to me, no, but I'm seeing that this club, with the history that you are giving, you are not that visible. So I started, to justify myself. Say, man, I just came in here. This is what I'm trying to do. So he then understood and said, you know what, it's okay. I will help you. The
struggle is real.
Yeah, I'll help you. How do you want me to help? I told him, no, I've got a challenge here with my Facebook. And he said, you know what, I will help you verify the Facebook page. We tried to verify. There were a lot of things that we needed to attend to. So quietly attend to those things to clear the page. Then the page was verified. And within the first year, because those guys, they could do their researches and they'll publish those results. And probably we as Highlanders, Dynamos, and probably Caps United as the biggest club, were not even concerned about them. We'll just not see them.
Yes.
And I'd already realized that FC Platinum is actually the biggest digital digital community at that moment.
Yes.
So I had to work to outdo FC Platinum. Then we managed to do that. And for me, that was it's something that I always say, if there is one thing that I see a visionary standing there, I feel for them, because being a visionary is like, sometimes I feel like it's like being someone can't speak, right? You've got something that you want to express, you want people to understand, but people don't understand. It's just like a vision. A vision cannot be easily understood by anyone, by the way. That's the biggest challenge. So I feel for, I've seen, great people, fail in football administration. Then I sit down and feel for them and say, probably the reason why they failed, probably they failed to make, or we deliberately chose not to understand their vision. So that was the issue. So most people didn't understand what I was trying to do. I used to get a lot of flack. People would just come and say, I know this page is boring. And so forth.
I know.
But for me, I
understand the struggle.
My strength is, I don't succumb to pressure, especially if there's something that I want to achieve.
I think it's that thing where people also don't understand the power even of being able to help each other. Like you were saying, this guy in Germany, you're speaking to him. I remember coming to you and asking you, you're verified. Yeah. I remember even having a conversation with Chidochi Zondo, because like you're saying, FC Platinum made the numbers then, and saying, you know what, I wanted to go this way, but at that time, like you're saying, the whole audience wanted pages to be like Bulawayo Chiefs. Yeah. So if you ever posted like, the normal way that others were doing internationally, Zimbabwean crowd at that point just thought it's the Bulawayo Chiefs or you're not doing well.
Yeah. That was it. So those are the challenges that we had to face. But look, at the end of the day, I'll repeat, my immediate boss understood. We shared the same vision. So he was very supportive. He would say, no, it's okay. I like it. Let's just remain focused. So we're focused.
It worked.
It went.
And then you are doing your media, you've got this vision, you're doing your things, and then you're thrust into acting CEO.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I didn't expect that, to be honest. The CEO was going on leave, and look, I was surrounded by senior employees, Highlanders. I think we had the finance officer and the administrator have been when it comes to institutional memory, they were by far, senior to me. Even in terms of age, I was young. I didn't even expect that, right? Then when that responsibility came, when the CEO was going on leave, then I was offered that responsibility. I didn't accept it. At first, I just wanted to go and consult because I'm one person who I don't want to take a responsibility when I'm in doubt that I can, because I'm very, very particular with my brand as a person. Mm-hmm. So I had to consult. So the people that I consulted, one of the people that I consulted, actually the first person that I consulted was my immediate boss. To say, no, this is what is coming. Should I say, you know what, just take it? So I consulted other people, they said, take it. So then I went back to the bosses and said, no, I think I can try. And the good thing about, look, every institution has got its own ups and downs. But if there is one thing about Highlanders, we need to understand that when you go to a work environment, you are not going there to make friends. That's point number one, right? You won't agree on everything, but to their credit, they create to a certain extent that family environment where you feel like, you know what, this is home. So that's the environment that I was. So I was surrounded by people. The two ladies, the finance officer and the administrator, they treated me as their young brother. The people were there already. They treated me because I think I was the youngest.
That's what I'm saying. From the outside, looking in, you are so young. This is an institution sometimes in a landscape that believes in experience. Internally, yes, they're treating you like family, but was there pressure from or criticism from outside, or people understood because you'd been in the institution before?
Okay, there was pressure and criticism in the sense that, sometimes there is something that I don't understand about us as people, as human beings. When I was given that responsibility, some people didn't see it as the club that is probably trying to take a paradigm shift, or a club that is actually giving a young man, a responsibility as part of grooming. The pressure then naturally comes in when someone then starts to have been just given that responsibility. Then someone starts bringing ageism. I'm put there by the old Madalas. Right? These are the old Madalas. But someone goes on to insult the old Madalas to say, no, now at least there is a young man, these old Madalas. But they're
the ones who gave me that chance.
So that on its own, it creates a bit of pressure in the sense that, people are human, right? And we're different. You don't know how someone then reacts to that. We give you a responsibility. Naturally, someone might even end up thinking that maybe you're the one who is actually, creating that narrative. Yes. So that on its own becomes, pressure. And then it then creates, because you have already created a narrative of ageism. You are now bringing the club. You are now tearing the club. Dividing the club between the young people and the old people. You see, so the old people out there, they also feel obliged to defend their age mates. So you then become a target. Criticism. No, he's not experienced. He's not. So that's where the pressure was coming from, and most of I know you see a lot of times a lot of negative stories about probably Highlanders, Dynamos, and from a Highlanders perspective, I have actually learned that people can actually create a ghost out of nothing. They can actually create conflicts out of nothing. where someone can just start and say, no, this is, Yvonne is like this, Yvonne like this. Then by doing that, you're actually dividing the family, because Highlanders is a big family. You are now leaving people with no option but to take sides. So that was the pressure that I had to say, okay, I've been given this responsibility by these old men. But already I've got a generation that is, that is over celebrating me.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong by celebrating.
And they're making it an ageism thing.
Yes. Just celebrate me, in a decent manner. Appreciate other people as well. Yes. But you can't then celebrate me to an extent that you are now, insulting. Some people actually gave me that response. That on its own, I think that's where, pressure started coming. But I naturally I absorb pressure. I don't succumb to pressure. So I would then try and navigate. But that was, for me, it created a debate around the experiences. He experienced enough, he's going to fail. And then others say, no, he's young, these old Madalas have failed. Yet, I think what we needed there, not because it was me, even if it was anyone else, the club has taken a paradigm shift.
Yes.
Why can't you just come together and say, you know what, it's good, young people now come to the club, the old Madalas will provide, the wisdom that is, but people started pulling, and you don't want to be a center of, of a conflict. So that's what that was my observation.
And you had a good spell at Highlanders, but you left. Are you at liberty to say what led to the decision for you to leave?
Yeah, I'm an open person. I joined Highlanders 2018 as a media and communications officer. Naturally, by the time I became the CEO of the club, I could actually feel that the club on its own, probably, remember I used to run that department on my own, right? Which is abnormal on its own. I felt it that it's either the club needed fresh ideas, whether I was supposed to be replaced or I was supposed to be given, support staff, right? Because this is a creative, space, and I've already mentioned that in those big institutions, you spend most of your time and energy defending the brand. So I had felt that, from 2018 to 2021, I needed, for the sake of the club, I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, I'm being genuine and honest, not for myself, but for the sake of the club, for its growth. I thought that it needed, new ideas. I've been there. I think I'd stabilized in terms of our digital media platforms, even the way how we're communicating now. I thought that we're now moving, but you need that extra mind, that extra spark to bring in a bit of creativity. So that was my thinking. Unfortunately, the only option that I could have at that moment was to be replaced, because the club was not well resourced to bring extra people, and as a person I was prepared for that. I didn't do that. For one reason, the story that I've shared with very few people within my spaces and my wife. It's a thought that came at a time when the club was going down financially. The club was struggling. We lost a sponsor. We were sponsored by Net1. We lost a sponsor. And for me, for who I am, I thought it was, for my brand, it was not going to make sense for me to resign when the club had just lost the sponsor. Right? So I thought this is not the right time. I sat down and said, Ronald, this is not the right time. You can't leave the club at this time. That was my decision. I sat down with my wife. I told her, you know what? One of the jobs, actually, I was supposed to come here to Harare. Right? It was a good job. I sat down with my wife and said, look, this is not the right time to leave Highlanders. I explained to her, I told her, look, I'm still young. I want to pursue a career in football administration. Mm-hmm. I can't be known as someone who dumps.
Jumped ship.
you dump an institution when it's in crisis. I said, no, I can't be that kind of a person. So I had to endure that pain during that period. There are a few people within my sector, they even know where I was going. So I said to myself, look, I think for now I've got enough already. I was part-time lecturer elsewhere. So I was getting enough, a decent income to take care of my family. So I said, no, I can't leave at this moment. So when then that transition then happened, I became the CEO, and I want to go back to your point to say, why did you leave? There is sometimes you stay in an environment and feel like, you know what, probably I've now overstayed. Mm-hmm. That's me. Mm-hmm. You can actually feel it and pick it. It's natural, not being personal with people, but you can actually tell to say, okay, probably our visions are now, they're now, they're not
aligning.
They're not aligned. And you then say, what is at the end of the day, you then, look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the club, right? So the environment that I was operating in, not because people were personal, but probably because of the vision that I had and the vision that they had for the club. They were not aligning. No one was wrong, right? We were all right, but the visions were no longer aligning. So the new executive, when it came, I could feel that the vision is not aligning. And we quite often kill institutions by forcing things. Where you say, you know what, I will force myself to exist in this institution. You've got different visions, and the institution suffers. So for me, the rightful thing to do was to leave the club. And there was no better time to leave the club than to leave it at that stage, because the club was financially stable. We just brought in better brands as the sponsors. No one could point fingers at me and say, you are running away because the club is in crisis. That was the right time to leave the club. So I left the club. When I left the club, I made sure that whoever is in charge, right, I'll support them. Because at the end of the day, I'm talking about the visions, our visions as individuals. But the club has got its own vision. Mm-hmm. Right? It's unfortunate that if there is conflict of interest in terms of our visions as employees or as administrators, the vision of the club suffers. So that's why I left. Not saying that the club was run by people's visions. I didn't want that.
Just didn't align.
Yes, that we just didn't align. And there is one thing that this is one thing that I want people to, especially people that are mentoring. I'm still young, but I've already started mentoring some people. To say, you don't necessarily need to force yourself where your visions are not aligning. Especially if you see that there is, you can't reconcile your visions. Don't force yourself there, because at the end of the day, you'll waste your time. You'll damage that particular institution, because the greater vision of the institution suffers when people are trying to, to outdo each other with different visions and so forth. So for me, it was just an easy decision. Where I said, you know what, I've always wanted to leave the club so that someone with fresh ideas, so that I can also see the club from outside.
But if you look at it, the decision you made worked in your way, because why I say that is, one, you decided not to leave when the club was financially struggling. Yeah. And you left at a time when they now had a sponsor. A sponsor who's linked to a club that you're now working with. Yeah. So it all worked in the way. I know a lot of people are waiting for me to get to this part to talk about your current job, Scotland, the vision, the mission, and all that. You are at Scotland. Yeah. And we can't take away the fact that you come in as a CEO in a team that was still feeling the effects of all the controversy of the Northern Region Division 1 title win. Okay. When you came in, what were your most immediate things to do?
Okay. My first thing to do was to work on the reputation of the club, to change the perception, because as you've already said, there was a lot of controversy. There was a lot of negative narratives about Scotland FC, how they got promoted and so forth. It was easier for me to do that because of the support that I got from the club president, Honorable Scott Sakwanya, the chairman, and the entire executive. You are given a bit of space to say, look, we are coming in here. Can you please do your job? That's what they did. Please do your job. So I sat down before I even took up the offer. I knew where the challenges, and said to myself, can I navigate this? How best do I deal with this? So the first thing that I prioritized, well, someone say because I'm a media person, media people think I'm biased one, but perception is everything. Perception is everything. Just go back, I think, in the last 2-3 months, go and check our posts. Scotland FC Facebook page, for instance. Go and check the comments. Fast forward to now. These things don't just happen overnight. We've been saying that, people, they undermine the role of communication, especially in an institution, and the strategies that come with it, because it's not just, you sit down, you plan, you strategize and say, how best do we do this? And for me, that was the immediate task, to bring a bit of confidence to the stakeholders. The Honorable is a brand, on his own. He attracts a lot of corporates, right? But we had to also protect his project, Scotland FC, because never mind that he's a brand on his own, there is no corporate that wants to be associated with a brand that is always,
Yes.
So to make sure that the first thing that to do is to make the corporates who have already committed to be, to walk this journey with Honorable Scott Sakwanya are protected, right? To ring-fence them by making sure, because the moment someone is hitting on our brand as Scotland FC, it's not only hitting on our brand, it's also hitting the people around us, the stakeholders around us, the corporates. So that was the first strategy, to say, okay, let's change the narrative.
I think for me, the one thing that stood out, Scotland obviously has been posting a lot, to the point where you literally wake up in the morning and you know if you're going to get content from Scotland. For me, it's a day when I woke up and there was the log standing of social media accounts. Because that sent a message stronger than anything else that had happened, where you finally realize this is a new club. And only last year, people only had negative things only to say about it. And now all of a sudden, you will post like a Scotland jersey. And someone will be like, I didn't know but this one I might buy. Which was the situation where even Bulawayo Chiefs, I literally ordered a jersey from Bulawayo Chiefs, not because I support Bulawayo Chiefs, but it was the vision of just looking at this really organized club, and it was the perception they were giving out there. So I think for your club, maybe the advantage is the CEO came from the same space, which also needs to be really guarded within an institution. So if I'm watching and I have power within a club, an association, when it comes to media, what are the takeaways you want them to know when it comes to the media department in a team, in an association?
Okay. I'll start by saying communication is the lifeblood of any organization. Any organization. The unfortunate part about communication as, I would say, as an industry, is that it is an everyday practice. We all communicate. Anyone can communicate. Even a dog communicates, even a cat communicates. It's an everyday practice. But then people need to understand that over and above that, communication is an art, whether you're from the arts, you're biased towards arts, you can say it's an art. If you're biased towards sciences, you can say it's a science. It's something that cannot be done by just anyone. That's why you see that it's not, it's not a coincidence that we have got institutions that are training people how to communicate. People go, to school for 4 years, being taught how to communicate. So communication is an art, and the unfortunate thing is that most institutions, especially in our industry, football industry, for too long, we have undermined that department. I went to one of my experiences with Highlanders. I went to Orlando Pirates. I got an opportunity to go to Orlando Pirates. You go to Orlando Pirates, they've got a very huge communication department, and you understand why their brand is what it is. I don't want to talk about even European clubs. So a communication department for a football club is as important as the technical team or as the players. And that is your, because it's perception, it's about, I don't know how best I can emphasize this, but everything is about perception. No matter how good you in PR I would say, no matter how good you are, if that good is not communicated, it's just as good as someone didn't do anything. So that department is very important. And what I also want to emphasize is that it's not only about having a department and just having heads. You need to have proper people. You need a balanced communication team. In the same way you are having a balanced first level in the field of play, right? There you have your videographer, your photographer, your digital media person, you've got your webmaster. It's a lot of departments, especially communications and media and marketing. You can combine them, they can be separate. But it's not a department where you can just pick someone from the street and say...
It's not like you can just take a goalkeeper and say, today you're the striker.
You can't. So if there is one thing that we need to do going forward, people must understand that the importance of that department. Very, very important. I would just add, going further to say, even if you look at how these successful clubs are investing on those departments.
Oh, they are.
They're investing a lot in those departments.
They don't have one person doing all the stuff.
You see, but in our case, I think we're seeing a bit of change. I'm happy I saw ZIFA trying to enforce club licensing, where now clubs are forced. It's now a must to have some of these departments. But our attitude has been that it's and I sometimes I laugh a lot when you talk about the communication department. Then someone will tell you, no, the spokesperson. Think about one person.
Yes.
But it's a huge department.
And talking about your vision, let's talk about your as a CEO.
Yes.
Where do you want to see Scotland going next 5 years?
Okay.
Even most immediate. This is the first season in the PSL.
Okay, I've already mentioned to say, we are individuals, got our own visions, but at the end of the day, they are guided by the vision of the institution, of the club. In our case, I'm very happy to be working with someone like Honorable Scott Sakpwana. I didn't know him, personally, but the time I started interacting with him, and now that I'm now working with him, he struck me as a visionary. We've got something in common, in the sense that what he wants, he goes for. If there is one thing that I've learned about him, he's very aggressive. He's a man who, if you say, he's a man who mobilizes people towards a vision. He wants to get there. You mobilize people and say, look, we want to get there. And for me, that excites me a lot, because that's also what I believe in. I'm a visionary style. I'm biased towards visionary style of management, where you mobilize people towards a vision, then you move. So back to your question, I want to see Scotland FC as a successful football club, not only in Zimbabwe, but in Africa, not only in terms of sporting achievements, but also in terms of its commercial viability. I think it's one thing that we have so long undermined or underestimated as a country. I don't want to mention names, but we've seen clubs owned by individuals coming, they win things, they disappear. It's because probably there is something. I don't want to judge them. I'm just speculating to say probably there is something that they didn't do right in terms of proper administration, where probably the club was being run from the pocket to say, There is one man here, is the chairman, is the CEO, is the treasurer, is everything. They just, remove their money, they pay from the, probably that's the reason why they failed. We want to, for us to achieve what we want to achieve, we want to try and do things right. That's what I would say. There is the good thing about football administration is that you do not reinvent the wheel, right? There are models out there. There are certain principles, basic principles, to follow for you to achieve what you want to achieve. I'll go back to the club licensing. We are lucky as a generation that we are now administering football where CAF, FIFA, will give guidelines, CAF, then the FA, they come up with a template and say, look, if your club is to be successful, focus on the sporting, focus on the administrative, focus on the, the finance, on the legal. They're giving us a template. That template, if you implement that template to the dot, your chances of being successful, both from a sporting and, from a commercial perspective, are more than high. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't want to stand here and say we are the best club ever to happen in Zimbabwe. We discovered this.
Yes.
We are not going to do that. We are just simply going to make sure that we try as much as we can to implement the club licensing template to the dot. And we believe that by so doing, we stand, chances of, of achieving what we want to achieve.
A lot of people would want me to ask about, you brought in an influx of players and all that. There are some technical issues that obviously I will keep and ask when the coach does come on the show to talk about, the gelling of the players, the what. That's more of the tactical side. But for you, I want to say, I saw the plan, the membership plan. And it seems to align to everything that you're saying, that you're trying to find ways in which the club can be viable. But what struck me about your plan, the membership plan, was how you intertwined the partnerships you have with EcoBank, with Inbugs, and put it together to package something that the member would be like, I don't support Scotland, but I'm sitting there and thinking, if I want a $4,000 loan at EcoBank, I have to pay to be a member for Scotland. I found that very, very interesting.
Okay.
And when we talk about those partnerships that you're bringing on board, any immediate ones that are coming as well?
No, obviously we are working tirelessly to look for as many partnerships as many partners as we're creating a basket of sponsors and partners. Maybe let me just go back to comment about the membership. The whole idea is to find. I've mentioned that we don't want to come here and claim to be the best club in the country, but you can't take away the fact that from a distance you can see that we're a disruptive club. Okay. We want to give, we want to provide, new value propositions to the key stakeholders, are the fans, and probably the partners as well. Because if we were to be fair, we might. It's a fact our economy is not doing well, but probably the reason why partners and sponsors are actually leaving, the sport. It's because probably we're not giving them the value that they deserve.
Yes.
There is something that we have, undervalued, sports marketing, where we see sponsorships, as where we still have got the old thinking of sponsorship, where you think sponsorship is just a donation. No, it's not a donation. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement where the club must benefit financially, and the other part should also benefit as well, because at the end of the day, it's a business about the bottom line. So we sat down and said to ourselves how best to give value to our key stakeholders. Number one, the fan. Mm-hmm. Number two, the sponsors and partners. How do you give them value? So this is, if there is a question that makes me lose sleep, that's the question, to say what next in terms of giving these key stakeholders value for their time, for their resources that they're investing. Those fans are also investing in football, by the way. So you should not only be taking, you should also be giving. So we then said, look, we've got EcoBank. EcoBank they are partners in banking. We've got Inbucks. They are partners. They've got certain products. We have got we are a Scotland FC. We've got people, we've got the fans, right? How then do we come up with something that that combines everyone, makes sure that if whatever cake that we're baking, everyone then gets a piece out of it. Then that's how we came up with that, that membership. So naturally, someone who buys a membership, a Scotland membership, they open an Inbucks account, right? Because there are benefits associated with what? With Inbucks. So you open an Inbucks account, and you can't just open an Inbucks account and just leave it like that. You're going to use it in terms of transaction. So Inbucks are also benefiting in terms of their business. Then you've got EcoBank. For one to access that loan, or
opening account,
they have to open an account, and you have to be your account. You have to pass all the necessary tests within the EcoBank. In terms of their standards for one to access a loan, you have to pass. So we're giving business to them. We are also giving. We're also empowering a fan, because you will access, a loan, a facility. So that's empowerment. You're empowering you as a member. And over and above that, we went further to say, if you are a platinum member, we'll pay your VIP tickets for for all our home games for the rest of the season, right?
And I get to be at the AGM.
You come to the AGM. You also contribute to the discourse in terms of shaping the future of the club. So it's about giving our key stakeholders value for their money. We want to give them a unique experience. So that membership is actually it's a starting point, because it's something that we can control within ourselves, the Scotland FC, between ourselves and our key stakeholders, the partners and the fans. But the whole idea is to try and influence a paradigm shift in Zimbabwean football in general, because the same value proposition that we were giving our members, we also want a fan to have, to experience, to have an experience, in the stadium, right? Where we are saying from the membership, fans should also go and enjoy, an experience in the stadium during a soccer match or on match days. Gone are the days where you expect fans to pay their hard-earned cash just to go and witness 90 minutes. Where they would pay $3, then they'll ask just 15 minutes before kickoff, because there's nothing to do in the stadium, and they just go there, they watch football, it's done, then they leave. So we're saying, going forward, we want to be part of this revolution in Scotland FC, to say, there is a new board. We've listened to their vision. It's also PSL. They are also trying to do the same. So we're saying, as a club, we also want to be part of that revolution, where we change, the experience of a fan, on match day.
I have to say, how teams can be able to use social media. I feel like, from the indications from the this year, that you'll probably be the ones who are going to be disruptive on the interaction between fans and clubs, and how to even monetize and commercialize a club. And I can't wait to see, even when you talk about Nyadzima Matchday experiences, because I think it's things that fans have been saying and talking about a lot. But then comes the issue of, you're growing the numbers online. Are those numbers translating to what's on the ground? And why I'm asking this question is, the whole of yesterday, we were awash with the story of the slashing of the jerseys, that by 50% the jersey price. And people are saying, is that an indication of the fact that you don't have fans on the ground? Maybe you beat more than you could chew?
Okay. I wish I had numbers in terms of the number of jerseys that we had sold yesterday, before that decision was taken. the jerseys are moving, right? They were moving at $40. We do have fans. We maybe before I explain now, we are then translating the digital following to. Let me just put it clear to say, the price reduction, it was the club president's call, not because we're struggling to move the jerseys. Those we have interacted with him, they will understand. Before we even introduce some distribution points, the sales were good. But then the president says, you know what, I just want my fans to be happy. He's that kind of a person. There are games where you see where you probably pledge to say, I'll pay for the fans to get. He's that kind of a person who likes to give people.
But is it, then it comes to my question, Ronald. You're a CEO. You've had an experience as a CEO at Highlanders. You're coming in, you've got your ideas, and you've got a club owner. With Highlanders, yes, they're stakeholders who are either your legends, your members, those that can vote and all that. But it's a different dynamic when you've got somebody who owns the club who can say, I don't want this. Doesn't matter what you as the CEO wants to say. How much of an influence or how much of a hand does the owner of the club have in the decision that you make as the CEO?
As I said, that is someone whom we are aligned in terms of a vision, and he is someone who's very smart, who understands why he brought people to come and run the institution on his behalf. So we before making these decisions, we sit down, we strike the balance to say, okay, this is what we want to do. Is it possible? If it's not possible, we are honest to him to say, no, this is not possible. If there is something that I also want to do as a CEO and it's not possible, he also tells me that, no, it's not possible. So in terms of decision making, it's just as proper, normal, corporate setup where there is this owner, then there are us, the technocrats. We sit down, we discuss. So at the end of the day, the decision that is taken, it's a collective decision. Right, it's not a club where the president, abuses everyone and say, I want this done. He's not that kind of a person. He's a very smart person. The club president is a very smart person. He knows he'll call you, sit down with you and say, this is the idea that I have. How is this possible and so forth. So you then deliberate and say, this is possible. That's the kind of a setup. He's involved. You come up with ideas and so forth because he's got a vision. He also wants to contribute to. Yeah. the work is already started. So whilst you are still working on the modalities to start the stadium, something's happening in Roa, and we want to assure the fans that at the right time they will see the work will start. And the club president is someone who wants he wants I don't want to say classy, but he's someone who wants he's a man of standards, right? He's not that person who wants to then say, okay, because the league is starting in March, let's just rush. And he's a man of standards, so he'll make sure that we do due diligence, so that when he puts his investment, he comes up with something that everyone would love, and that will serve the purpose at the end of the day.
I can't wait to see what else Scotland has in store. I know a lot of you have other questions that you'd have wanted me to ask, but I feel like I have the CEO in the building. There are certain questions that I wanted to relay to him. The technical stuff we'll talk when Tundra Indraya decides he's going to come and sit on this seat. Then we can talk about what are your goals, what are you hoping, how is the team going to gel, all these visions on the technical front. But I'm very excited to have you on the show. I'm very excited that you came and we had this conversation. But before we leave, obviously, the CEO, you're leading the club. What would be the ideal? Is there like because I usually when the season is starting, there's always this, we want to be in the top 4, we want to be in the top 8, we want to be, what is Scotland's vision for the first season? Okay,
I'm sorry, Tonde, to say this, but look, as an administrator, I know that the difficulties, it's not easy to navigate 34 games in a league, but my wish, I'll start by my wish. I would have loved to start, by winning the championship. It's only Black Rhinos 1984, I think, who did that, won the championship in their maiden season. It would have been nicer to do that as Scotland FC. But look, I know when it comes to football, realistically, it's not easy to navigate 34 games. So I'm predicting a very tough season for us, if I'm to be fair. Because we're a team to beat, and you know what it means in football. We're a team to beat, so it's going to be a very, very tough football. And as a CEO, as an administrator, I'll be happy if we're to finish in the top 4. I'll be more than happy if we could finish in the top 4.
He's happy that he finished in the top 4. What do you think? What do you think is going to happen to Scotland in the first season? You can talk in the comment section and tell me exactly what you think will happen to Scotland. But what I can guarantee you, I think it's going to be a very interesting season with all these ideas that are coming out of Scotland. And obviously having known you on the side, the belief is there. I know you are the right person for the job. So we'll wait to see what else Ronald Bruce Moyo has in store.
Thank you.
And from this day onward, I never asked you that. Now I'm going to be like Roland. No, Ronald for what? Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Until the next time, we bring another big sporting personality, hoping that you got an insight into the CEO of Scotland FC. I know a lot of times you hear appointments being made and being publicized in the media, and you wonder, who is this person? How did they get there? I hope you heard about the story. And next week, same time, same place, it will be a different personality, but all at the same time, we'll just be getting to know that person. Until next time, goodbye.